The cantina on Outpost 7 was loud tonight. Blue smoke from alien cigarettes hung in the air like fog. The smell of strong drinks mixed with the sound of laughter. Zephyrian soldiers sat around metal tables, their gray skin glowing under the bright lights. They had just come back from patrol duty near human space. Commander Vex Carlin lifted his glass high. His 3 eyes blinked slowly as he looked at his men. "Another boring day watching the humans," he said with a laugh. "They float around in their tiny ships like lost children." The other soldiers laughed too. Lieutenant Zara Nexus, young and eager to please her commander, slammed her fist on the table. "I heard they tell stories about their warriors," she said. "Big stories about impossible fights." "Stories?" asked Sergeant Crix Tolan, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "What kind of stories?" Zara pulled out her datapad. She had been studying human communications for weeks. "Listen to this one," she said, clearing her throat. "They say a human soldier named Sergeant Ryan Blake held off 300 enemy soldiers by himself. Just one human against 300. The entire table burst into laughter. Drinks spilled as the soldiers slapped their knees and shook their heads. 300? Vex wiped tears from his eyes. These humans and their fairy tales. What's next? Did he fly without a ship too? Wait, there's more, Zara continued, scrolling through her notes. They have another story about Lieutenant Amy Foster. She supposedly carried 5 wounded soldiers through a minefield while enemy fire rained down on her. Carried them for 2 miles without stopping. More laughter filled the cantina. Other alien species at nearby tables turned to look at the noisy Zephyrians. Carried 5 soldiers? Crix shook his head. How big do they think these humans are? Giants? I've seen humans, said another soldier named Dick Faron. They're small. Soft skin, weak bones, no natural weapons. They can barely lift their own. Equipment, Vex nodded. Exactly. They need machines for everything. Machines to fly, machines to fight, machines to think. Without their technology, they're nothing. Captain Jake Morrison sat at the bar, nursing his drink quietly. He was the only human in the cantina, serving as a liaison officer between the human fleet and the Zephyrian military. His brown hair was cut short, and his uniform was clean but simple compared to the elaborate armor worn by the aliens. Jake could hear every word they said. His face stayed calm, but his hands tightened around his gloss. "Oh, here's my favorite," Zara said, reading from her pad again. "They have a legend about someone called Captain Ben Tucker. He stayed behind on an exploding ship to save his crew. They say he manually operated the escape pods while the reactor core melted around him." The laughter grew even louder. Some soldiers banged their glasses on the table. Manually operated? Vex could barely speak through his laughter. While the reactor melted? What did he do? Grow extra arms? Become immune to radiation? These humans, Crix said, wiping his eyes. They must think we're stupid to believe such nonsense. It's their primitive culture, Vex explained to the younger soldiers. They make up impossible stories to feel brave. They know they're weak, so they create fake heroes. But why such crazy stories? Asked Zara. Why not make them believable? Because they're desperate, Vex answered. When you're the weakest species in the galaxy, you need the biggest lies to sleep at night. Jake took a long sip of his drink. He wanted to say something, but his orders were clear. Keep the peace. Don't start fights. Let the aliens think what they want. I heard from command, Dick said, leaning forward, that humans have been asking to join the Galactic Defense Force. This brought fresh waves of laughter. Join the Defense Force? Vex slapped the table. What would they do? Tell scary stories to the enemy? Maybe they could carry our equipment, Crix suggested. Oh, wait. They're too weak for that, too. I vote we let them join, said another soldier. We could use the entertainment. Imagine them in real battle, crying for their mothers. The mockery continued for another hour. The Zephyrians shared more human stories they had intercepted. Tales of soldiers fighting impossible odds. Stories of humans who never gave up, never surrendered, never left their friends behind to the aliens. These were just fairy tales. Primitive stories from a primitive species. Jake finished his drink and stood up to leave. As he walked past their table, Vex called out to him. Hey, human, Vex said with a grin. We were just discussing your people's creative storytelling. Jake stopped and turned around. His blue eyes met Vex's 3 black ones. Is there something you wanted to say, Commander? Jake asked politely. Just wondering, Vex continued. Do you actually believe those impossible stories your kind tells? Jake was quiet for a long moment. The cantina grew silent, waiting for his answer. Every species has its stories, Commander, Jake said finally. Some are true, some aren't. The trick is knowing which is which. He turned and walked toward the exit. That's not an answer, Vex called after him. Jake paused at the door without turning around. No, he said quietly. I guess it isn't. The door slid shut behind him, leaving the Zephyrians alone with their laughter. But their laughter would not last much longer. Outside in the corridor, Jake walked slowly back to his quarters. He thought about the stories the aliens had mocked. Ryan Blake, Amy Foster, Ben Tucker. Jake knew something the Zephyrians didn't know. Those weren't stories. Those were reports. The cantina door opened again, but this time no one laughed. An old Zephyrian entered, his body covered in scars from 100 battles. His armor was ancient, but well-maintained. His eyes held the weight of too many wars. War. Master Thek Vorin had arrived, and he had heard everything. The cantina fell silent as War Master Thek Vorin walked through the door. Every Zephyrian soldier in the room knew who he was. Stories of his battles were taught in military schools across their home worlds. Thek was old, even by Zephyrian standards. His gray skin was darker than the others, marked with deep scars that told the story of countless fights. His left arm was mechanical, replaced after a battle with space pirates 20 years ago. His right eye was clouded white, blind from a Mie, chemical weapon during the Sector 9 war, but his remaining eye was sharp and clear. It saw everything. The younger soldiers at Vex's table straightened up as Thek approached. Lieutenant Zara quickly put away her datapad. Sergeant Crix stopped laughing and tried to look serious. War Master, Commander Vex said, standing up and giving a respectful bow. We didn't expect to see you here tonight. Vex said nothing yet. First, he moved slowly, his mechanical arm whirring softly with each step. He looked at each soldier at the table, studying their faces with his good eye. I heard laughter, Vex said finally. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel grinding. Together, what was so funny? The soldiers looked at each other nervously. No one wanted to speak first. We were just discussing human military stories, War Master, Vex said carefully. Some of their claims are quite imaginative. Vex's scarred face didn't change expression. Imaginative, he repeated slowly. Tell me about these stories. Zara cleared her throat. Well, sir, they claim to have soldiers who can fight impossible battles. One human against hundreds of enemies. Soldiers who carry multiple wounded comrades through dangerous areas. Warriors who sacrifice themselves to save others. Impossible battles, Vex said, still not showing any emotion. Interesting choice of words. He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. The metal groaned under his weight. The other soldiers waited, unsure what to expect. 30 cycles ago, Vex began, I was a battle commander in the Outer Rim. We were hunting pirates who had been attacking supply convoys. The soldiers leaned forward. Beck rarely spoke about his past battles, especially not the classified ones. My battle group detected a damaged ship drifting in space. Small vessel, unknown design. We had never seen anything like it before. Vex. Good Eye grew distant, remembering. The ship was barely holding together. Life support failing. We thought it was a derelict, maybe valuable salvage, so we decided to board it. He paused, reaching for a glass of water with his mechanical hand. We found 12 crew members inside. Bipedal species, pink skin, small frames. They looked weak, malnourished. They had been surviving on emergency rations for weeks. Commander Vex frowned. Pink skin? Small frames? War Master. That sounds like ... humans, Beck finished. Though we didn't know what to call them then. This was before first contact. Before the treaties. Before the diplomatic missions. The table was completely quiet now. Even the noise from other tables seemed to fade away. We tried to communicate with them, Beck continued. Basic sign language, simple sounds. We just wanted to know what species they were, where they came from. What happened? Zara asked quietly. Beck's expression grew darker. They thought we were attacking them. Or maybe they just didn't trust us. Hard to say. He took a drink of water, the mechanical fingers of his left hand, careful not to crush the glass. The leader was a female. Short, maybe 5.5 feet tall. Brown hair tied back, green eyes. She wore a uniform with stripes on the sleeves. Later we learned this meant she was a sergeant. A sergeant? Crix asked. That's a low rank. Yes. Beck agreed. But she commanded those 12 humans, like she was born to lead. The War Master's voice grew quieter, forcing the others to lean closer to hear him. We entered their ship with full battle armor. Energy weapons, plasma shields, quantum. Scanners. We had overwhelming technological advantage. We outnumbered them 5-1. He paused again, and for the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. We expected them to surrender immediately. Any intelligent species would have. But they didn't? Vex asked. Vex shook his head slowly. They fought. The word hung in the air like a challenge. They fought like nothing I had ever seen. Room by room, corridor by corridor. They used their own ship against us. Turned the lights off to create darkness. Rerouted power to electrify doors. Used maintenance shafts to attack from behind. Lieutenant Zara shifted uncomfortably in her seat. But surely your superior technology, ... meant nothing, Beck interrupted. They took our weapons when we fell. Learned to use them in minutes. They turned our own equipment against us. The old warrior's mechanical hand clenched into a fist. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they never stopped. We wounded them. They kept fighting. We cornered them. They found new ways to attack. We cut off their escape routes. They created new ones. How many of your soldiers? Did you lose? Vex asked quietly. 17, Vex said. 17 of my best warriors. Killed by 12 starving humans with failing life support. The number hit the table like a physical blow. 17 Zephyrian soldiers, killed by primitive. Humans? That's impossible, Crix whispered. Vex's good eye focused on him with laser intensity. Is it? I mean, our training, our weapons, our experience, ... meant nothing to them, Vex said again. Because they had something we didn't understand. Something we had never encountered before. What? Zara asked. Vex was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the cantina continued its normal buzz of conversation, but their table remained an island of silence. They refused to accept defeat, he said finally. Not because they were stupid, not because they were desperate. They refused because they had decided that losing was not an option. He stood up slowly, his mechanical joints whirring. The female. Sergeant, the one who led them. In the final battle, she was bleeding from 7 different wounds. Her left arm was broken. She could barely stand. Deck began walking away from the table, then stopped and turned back. She looked at me with those green eyes and said something in their language. I didn't understand the words then, but I learned them later. What did she say? Vex asked. Vex's scarred face showed the ghost of a smile, but it was not a happy expression. She said, "You can kill me, but you cannot make me quit." The War Master walked toward the exit, leaving 6 stunned soldiers behind him. "War Master," Zara called after him. "What happened to her?" "To the humans?" Dex stopped at the door, his back still turned to them. "I saw it," he said quietly. Then he was gone, leaving them alone with their thoughts and their suddenly quiet laughter. The 6 Zephyrian soldiers sat in stunned silence after War Master Vec left. Commander Vex stared at his drink, his 3 eyes unfocused. Lieutenant Zara kept looking at the door where the old warrior had disappeared. He was lying, Crick said. Finally, he had to be lying. War Master Vec doesn't lie, Vex replied quietly. He's never lied about anything. But 17 soldiers? Zara shook her head. Against 12 humans? That's impossible. Before anyone could respond, the cantina door opened again. Ek walked back in, moving with the same slow, deliberate steps. He approached their table and sat down heavily in his chair. "You want to know what happened," he said. It wasn't a question. The soldiers nodded eagerly. Vec closed his good eye and was quiet for a long moment. When he opened it again, he seemed to be looking at something far away. "The human ship was called the Defiant," he began. "We learned that later from their records. It was a patrol vessel designed for long-range reconnaissance." He gestured with his mechanical hand, sketching the shape of the ship in the air. Small craft, maybe 60 meters long. 3 decks, narrow corridors, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. The crew had been out for 2 months when their main drive failed. 2 months? Vex asked. That's a long time for such a small ship. Yes, they had been eating emergency rations for weeks. Their water recycler was failing. The air scrubbers were working at half capacity. But they didn't give up. They kept trying to repair their ship, kept sending distress signals. Vex's expression grew darker. When we boarded, I expected quick surrender. Any reasonable species would have been grateful for rescue. Instead, the female sergeant started giving orders immediately. What kind of orders? Battle orders. She split her 12 crew members into 4 teams of 3. Each team took a different section of the ship. They knew every corridor, every hiding place, every system. The War Master's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. The sergeant's name was Lisa Chun. She was a combat engineer, trained to build and destroy things. The moment she saw us, she started turning her own ship into a weapon. How? Zara asked. She rerouted power from life, support to the electrical systems. Suddenly every door handle, every metal surface, could deliver a shock that would drop a Zephyrian soldier. She flooded sections with coolant gas, making it impossible to see. She depressurized compartments to slow us down. Vec paused, remembering. One of her team was named Danny Rodriguez. He was their medic, trained to heal people. But he fought like a warrior. He used medical supplies to create smoke bombs. He turned surgical tools into weapons. And all the while, he was still treating his wounded teammates. They had wounded? 7 of them were injured in the initial boarding. Rodriguez kept them, fighting by giving them pain medication, bandaging their wounds, even performing surgery between battles. The soldiers around the table exchanged glances. This was starting to sound like the impossible stories they had been mocking. Another human was named Kevin Walsh, Neck continued. Communications specialist. He should have been trying to surrender, trying to negotiate. Instead, he used his equipment to jam our communications. He created feedback loops that made our helmets ring like bells. He even managed to hack into our battle armor systems. Impossible, Crix muttered. Our systems are encrypted. Tell that to Kevin Walsh, Vic replied. He turned our own technology against us, made our helmet displays, show false information, caused our weapons to misfire at critical moments. The War Master's voice grew quieter. The fourth team member I remember was Maria Santos, weapons specialist. She had been maintaining their small armory, keeping their few weapons operational. When the fighting started, she took apart their equipment and rebuilt it into things we had never seen. What kind of things? Explosive devices made from power cells and metal scraps. Traps that used gravity to crush. Weapons that fired pieces of their own ship as ammunition. Beck stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We thought we were fighting 12 desperate refugees. We were wrong. We were fighting 12 soldiers who had decided to make their last stand. But you still outnumbered them. Vex pointed out. Yes, and our weapons were better. Our armor was stronger. Our training was more extensive. But they had something we didn't. What? Vec turned back to face them. They had a reason to fight. What reason? Each other. They weren't fighting for their ship or their mission or their orders. They were fighting to protect their friends. The old warrior sat back down, his mechanical joints creaking. Lisa Chun could have surrendered and saved her own life. Instead, she chose to die before she would let her crew be captured. Danny Rodriguez could have hidden in the medical bay. Instead, he carried wounded soldiers to safety under enemy fire. Kevin Walsh could have used his communication skills to negotiate. Instead, he chose to fight. And Maria Santos? Zara asked. Beck's expression grew even more serious. Maria Santos made the ultimate sacrifice. When we finally cornered them in the ship's reactor room, she had a choice. She could surrender and live, or she could destroy the ship's computer core to protect information about her species. What did she choose? She looked at Lisa Chun, and Lisa nodded. Maria smiled and said something in their language. Then she overloaded the reactor. The table fell silent. The explosion should have killed everyone, Beck continued. But at the last second, Lisa Chun managed to get 3 of her people into an escape pod. She stayed behind with Maria and 2 others to make sure the job was done. She chose to die. She chose to protect her friends, her species, her duty. Death was just the price she was willing to pay. Beck's good eye focused on each soldier in turn. That's when I understood. The human stories you were laughing about? They're not stories. They're reports. They're examples of what humans do when they have something worth fighting for. But that was just one crew, Crix said weakly. One ship. Vec shook his head. No, that was the day I learned that humans don't see impossible odds. They see challenges. They don't see certain death. They see last chances. They don't see defeat. They see opportunities to prove what they're made of. The War Master stood up again, preparing to leave. 17 of my soldiers died that day, he said. Good soldiers. Experienced soldiers. Soldiers who had fought in dozens of battles. He looked at each young face around the table. They died because they underestimated their enemy. Because they thought being human meant being weak. Beck walked toward the door, then stopped one last time. The 3 humans who escaped in the pod? They were rescued 6 hours later by another human ship. The rescue captain asked Lisa Chun's survivors what had happened. You know what they said? The soldiers waited. They said it was just another Tuesday. This time, when Neck left, no one laughed. The cantina stayed quiet for a long time after War Master Thek finished his story. The 6 Zephyrian soldiers sat around their table, staring at their drinks. No one spoke. No one laughed. Lieutenant Zara was the first to break the silence. "But that was just one incident," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "One desperate crew on a dying ship." Commander Vex looked at her with tired eyes. "Was it?" "It had to be," Crick said, but he didn't sound sure. "I mean, if all humans fought like that, ... He didn't finish the sentence. The implication hung in. The air like smoke. The cantina door opened again, and War Master Thek returned to their table. This time he carried a data pad in his mechanical hand. "You think it was just one incident," he said, sitting down heavily. "You want to believe it was unusual, that most humans are different." He activated the data pad, and holographic text appeared above the table. After the encounter with the Defiant, Zephyrian High Command ordered a full investigation into human military capabilities. This report has been classified for 30 years. The soldiers leaned forward to read the floating text. Incident Report 2847. Human patrol vessel engaged by Zephyrian battle group. Result: 17 Zephyrian casualties. Ship destroyed. 3 human survivors. Recommendation: further study required. Thek scrolled down to the next entry. Incident Report 2851. Human cargo freighter attacked by pirates while Zephyrian forces. Observed. Result: pirates destroyed. Human crew survived with minimal casualties. Note: humans converted mining equipment into weapons in real time. Another entry appeared. Incident Report 2863. Human research station under siege by hostile aliens. Zephyrian rescue mission arrived to find the station had already been saved. Result: 12 humans had defeated over 200 attackers using improvised tactics. Zara's eyes widened. 200? The report gets more detailed, Thek said, continuing to scroll. The research station was run by scientists, not soldiers. Their leader was Dr. Nancy Price, a botanist studying plant growth in zero gravity. When the station was attacked, she organized the defense. A botanist? Vex asked. Dr. Price used her knowledge of plant biology to create biological weapons. She turned the station's greenhouse into a chemical factory. Her team made poisonous gases from common plants. They created slippery surfaces using plant oils. They even trained the station's plants to release irritating pollen on command. Crix shook his head in disbelief. Plants as weapons? The attacking aliens had advanced military equipment. Plasma rifles, battle armor, orbital support. But they had never fought an enemy that could turn a flower garden into a battlefield. More entries appeared on the holographic display. Incident Report 2879. Human medical ship defended itself against 4 military corvettes. Result: 3 corvettes destroyed, 1 captured. Human casualties, minor injuries only. A medical ship? Zara asked. How? The ship's chief medical officer, Dr. Robert Hayes, had been a combat medic before becoming a doctor. When the corvettes attacked, he turned his medical knowledge into tactical advantage. Thek expanded the report details. Dr. Hayes used medical scanners to analyze the enemy ship designs. He found weak points in their armor. He created weapons from surgical tools. He even used the ship's medical nanobots to disable enemy electronics. But the most impressive part was how he motivated his crew. The medical ship had 43 people on board. Doctors, nurses, medical technicians. Not one of them was a soldier. What did he do? He reminded them why they became doctors. To save lives, to fight death itself. He told them that the people attacking them were trying to kill innocent patients. So the doctors and nurses became warriors. The datapad showed images from the battle. Human medical staff using surgical tools as weapons. Nurses turning medical equipment into shields. Doctors creating chemical weapons from hospital supplies. They won because they refused to let their patients die, Vec explained. Fighting. For others made them stronger than fighting for themselves. More reports scrolled past. Incident after incident of humans achieving impossible victories. Incident Report 2901. Human construction crew survives attack by military strike team. Used building equipment to create fortifications and weapons. Incident Report 2934. Human school teachers protect students from armed raiders. Converted classroom supplies into defensive systems. Incident Report 2956. Human farmers defeat professional mercenaries using agricultural tools and knowledge of local terrain. Vex stared at the data in shock. These can't all be real. Vec fixed him with his good eye. Every report has been verified. Every incident investigated. Every story confirmed. But why? Zara asked. What makes them fight like this? That's what our psychologists wanted to know, Vec replied. So they studied human culture, human history, human nature. He brought up a new file on the datapad. Analysis report. Human military psychology. Conclusion. Humans possess an unusual trait among galactic species. They form emotional bonds that override logical survival instincts. Emotional bonds? They call it loyalty, friendship, love. When humans care about something or someone, they will fight beyond all reason to protect it. Vec's mechanical hand gestured at the data. Most species fight to live. Humans live to fight for what they believe in. That changes everything. The stories you were laughing about earlier, he continued. Sergeant Ryan Blake holding off 300 enemies? That actually happened. He was protecting a refugee camp full of human children. Lieutenant Amy Foster carrying 5 wounded soldiers through a minefield? She did that because she had promised their families she would bring them home alive. Captain Ben Tucker staying behind on an exploding ship? He had a wife and daughter waiting for him. He chose to die so they could live. The soldiers around the table looked stunned. Every impossible human military legend is real, Beck said quietly. They're not fairy tales or propaganda. They're just Tuesday afternoon for humans. He stood up to leave again, then paused. There's something else you should know. Something even more frightening. What? Bex asked. These reports only cover encounters with human civilians. Scientists, doctors, farmers, teachers. People who had never been soldiers. Vec's scarred face showed. A grim smile. We've never actually fought their real military. He left them sitting in stunned silence, finally understanding that humans were not the weak, primitive species they had thought. Outside the cantina, Captain Jake Morrison leaned against the wall. He had heard every word through the thin door. Pulled out his communication device and sent a message to Earth Command. Aliens are starting to figure us out. Recommend we introduce ourselves properly before they panic. The message was signed, Captain Jake Morrison, former Marine Corps, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines. Jake smiled and walked back to his quarters. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. The next morning, news of War Master Vec's revelations spread through Outpost 7 like wildfire. Zephyrian soldiers, who had been laughing about human stories the night before now, walked the corridors in thoughtful silence. Commander Vex found himself staring at every human he passed. The maintenance workers fixing power conduits, the diplomatic staff carrying datapads, the few human traders in the commercial sector. He tried to imagine them as the warriors that had described. It was hard to believe. They looked so ordinary, so harmless. Lieutenant Zara spent the morning reviewing human communication intercepts with new eyes. Every report that had seemed like impossible bragging now felt like a casual mention of Tuesday's events. Human vessel Phoenix reports successful. Defense against pirate attack. Minimal casualties. Returning to patrol route. Research Station Alpha 7 has resolved their hostile alien problem. Scientists are returning to their plant studies. No assistance needed. Medical transport Clara Barton encountered 3 military corvettes. Corvettes have been neutralized. Patients are stable and en route to hospital. Each report was filed in the same matter-of-fact tone, as if fighting impossible odds was just part of normal life. Sergeant Crix found Captain Jake Morrison in the cantina, eating breakfast alone. The human looked up as Crix approached, his blue eyes calm and friendly. "Mind if I sit?" Crix asked nervously. "Please do," Jake replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. They sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Jake continued, eating his eggs while Crix tried to find words. "I heard an interesting story last night," Crix said finally. "Oh? What kind of story?" "About humans, about fighting, about impossible things." Jake's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Sounds like? You've been talking to War Master Thek. You know about his encounter with your people?" Jake set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. "The Defiant? Yeah, I know about it. Lisa Chun was my training instructor at the academy. Good soldier, better person." Crix felt his world shift slightly. "You knew her?" "She taught me hand to hand. Combat. Always said the most important lesson wasn't how to fight, but what was worth fighting for." "And what did you decide was worth fighting for?" Jake smiled sadly. "Same thing she did. The people who can't fight for themselves." Across the outpost, other conversations were happening. Zephyrian soldiers were approaching human crew members with new curiosity and respect. The humans, unaware of the previous night's revelations, responded with their usual casual friendliness. This only made it more unsettling for the aliens. How could a species capable of such incredible violence be so? Nice, War Master Thek found himself in the office of Outpost Commander Zek Morlan, the highest-ranking Zephyrian officer on the station. "Is it true?" Morlan asked without preamble. "The reports about human combat capabilities?" "Every word," Thek replied. "I've seen it myself, and they've been living among us for months, working beside us, eating in our cantinas." "Yes." Morlan was quiet for a long moment. "Do they know that we know?" "I think Captain Morrison suspects something. He's not stupid." "What do we do with this information?" Before Thek could answer, the office door chimed. "Come in," Morlan called. Captain Jake Morrison entered, followed by 2 other humans. A woman, with short blonde hair, wearing a military uniform, and a man in civilian clothes with the calm demeanor of a scientist. "Commander Morlan, War Master Thek," Jake said with a respectful nod. "I believe it's time for some proper introductions." "Introductions?" Morlan asked. "Yes, sir. I'm Captain Jake Morrison, but you know that. What you don't know is that I'm also a former officer in the Human Colonial Marines, 2nd Battalion. I served 3 tours in the outer colonies before taking this diplomatic position." He gestured to the woman beside him. "This is Colonel Sarah Davis, commander of the human military advisors currently stationed on Earthships in this sector." "Colonel?" Thek's good eye widened. "But you've been listed as a cultural attach," Sarah smiled. "That's not technically a lie. I do study culture. Specifically, military culture and how different species fight." Jake indicated the 3rd human. "And this is Dr. Peter Watson. He's been cataloging alien military capabilities for the human Defense Force." Dr. Watson was also the chief scientist on research, Station Alpha 7. Dr. Watson stepped forward with a gentle smile. "The one where we had that little disagreement with some hostile visitors last month," Moreland stared at him. You're the botanist who defeated 200 attackers? Well, defeated is a strong word, Dr. Watson said modestly. We just convinced them that attacking a greenhouse full of humans wasn't their best career choice. Deck leaned forward in his chair. Why are you revealing this now? Colonel Davis answered. Because last night you revealed the truth about us to your soldiers. Word is spreading through the alien community. We figured it was time for honest conversation. Honest conversation about what? Moreland asked. Jake pulled out a chair and sat down. About what humans really are. About what we're capable of. And about what we want. Which is peace, Sarah said simply, but peace that lasts. Peace that protects the innocent. Peace that stands up to bullies. Dr. Watson nodded. We've been studying galactic politics for years. We know about the pirate raids, the territorial disputes, the weak preying on the weaker. It's the same pattern we've seen throughout human history. And you want to stop it? Deck asked. We want to help, Jake corrected. Humans work better as part of a team. Always have. Moreland looked confused. But if you're as capable as the reports suggest, why haven't you simply taken control? With your fighting abilities, you could dominate most species. The three humans exchanged glances, and Dr. Watson chuckled. Because domination isn't the point. We don't fight to rule people. We fight to protect them. That makes no sense, Moreland said. Power is the goal of warfare. Not for us, Sarah replied. For humans, power is just a tool. The goal is making sure the people we care about are safe and free. Jake leaned back in his chair. Commander, what did your soldiers think of humans before last night? They thought you were weak, primitive, harmless. And now? Now they're terrified. Good, Jake said. Fear can be useful. It keeps people honest. But we don't want your people to be afraid of us forever. What do you want? Colonel Davis answered. We want your people to trust us, to work with us, to know that when humans say we'll defend our friends, we mean it. Dr. Watson added, and when we say we'll fight our enemies, we mean that too. Deck studied the three humans with his good eye. The stories your soldiers tell about impossible battles, are they all true? Every one, Jake confirmed. But they're not the whole story. What do you mean? Sarah smiled. We also tell stories about impossible rescues, about humans who walked into enemy territory alone to bring one person home, about doctors who stayed behind in plague zones to save alien children they'd never met, about teachers who learned entire alien languages in weeks just to help refugee students feel welcomed, Dr. Watson added. About engineers who worked 36 hours straight to fix life support systems on ships full of strangers. Jake finished. Moreland was quiet for a long moment. You fight as hard to save people as you do to kill them. Harder. All three humans said at the same time. The office fell silent. Outside the window, they could see human and alien workers moving through the station. Corridors, going about their daily tasks. But now everything looked different. What happens now? Deck asked finally. Jake stood up. Now you decide what kind of neighbors you want us to be. Neighbors? Humans are here to stay, Sarah explained. We're part of the galactic community. Now, the question is whether we're allies or just coexists. And if we choose allies? Dr. Watson's gentle smile turned serious. Then you'll never have to worry about pirates again, or raiders, or bullies of any kind. And if we don't? Jake shrugged. Then we'll still protect innocent people. We'll still fight against cruelty and oppression. We just won't coordinate with you. That's not a threat, Sarah clarified. It's just what humans do. We can't help ourselves. Moreland looked at War Master Deck. Your recommendation? Deck was quiet for a long moment, remembering the battle on the Defiant 30 years ago. remembering 17 good soldiers who had died because they underestimated their enemy. I recommend we make very sure these humans remain our friends, he said finally. The 3 humans smiled. That, Jake said, is exactly what we were hoping you'd say. 2 hours later, Commander Vex found himself back in the cantina, but this time Captain Jake Morrison was sitting at his table. They were sharing a drink and talking about their respective military experiences. So when you said every species has its stories, Vex said, you meant. I meant some stories are lessons, Jake replied. Some are warnings, and some are promises. Which are the human stories? Jake took a sip of his drink and smiled. All 3. Across the cantina, Lieutenant. Zara was talking with Dr. Watson about botany and biochemical warfare. Sergeant Crix was comparing combat techniques with Colonel Davis. For the first time since humans had arrived at Outpost 7, the aliens weren't laughing at human stories. They were listening to them, and they were learning that the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their ability to fight impossible battles, that it was their ability to make ordinary people want to fight impossible battles alongside them. War Master. Vex sat alone at the bar, nursing H.